Well, I mean, what is it like for you, knowing the region, studying it, when they get up on the news and say Iran is backing al-Qaeda in Afghanistan? That when it's the opposite group, Shiite, Sunni, arch enemies, they fight more than they do with Christians or Jews. Really, if you look at the statistics that I've looked at, I mean, that's like saying the Dallas Cowboys are the New York Giants. I mean, it's clearly two different groups. And then the famous case 2.5 years ago with the president of Afghanistan, and Bush says, yes, Iran is funding Taliban and al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, and Mohammed Karzai says, excuse me, Your Excellency, respectfully, but Iran's helping us. Their enemy is al-Qaeda. They're back on the news, as you know, saying that Iran is al-Qaeda, when the last White House admitted they were using al-Qaeda-based groups to stage terror attacks inside Iran.
Yeah. Well, in answer to your question, Alex, I take this blood pressure medicine now, so when I listen to this kind of stuff. But all kidding aside, when Bush was allowed to mischaracterize, maybe a nice way of saying things, all these very important developments, and the mainstream press, people like Charlie Gibson, would just kind of say, I refer specifically to Bush's famous exit interview where Charlie Gibson finally said, well, Mr. President, why did you really think you had to attack Iraq? And he said, simple. Saddam Hussein wouldn't let the UN inspectors in. And Charlie Gibson said, okay. And he goes on to the next question,
But he was letting the inspectors in.
They were combing through his palaces. They were interviewing his scientists one-on-one. It was George Bush that threw the UN inspectors out 2 days before shock and awe. And Charlie Gibson lets him get away with that. Let's get back to Iran. Here's, I told you about the estimate here. It actually appeared in November of 07. They started working on it in 06. And so November 07, this big shock, namely, that the NIE judges, and I used to chair these things, so I know what kind of work goes into this, high confidence that Tehran had halted a covert nuclear weapons program in the fall of 2003. What does the president say the following March? He says, quote, Iran has declared that he wants to be a nuclear power with a weapon to destroy people, including others in the Middle East, end quote. That's made up. You make that kind of stuff up, but you shouldn't be allowed to get away with it. Iran never declared any such thing. As a matter of fact, the intelligence people were telling the president that Iran had ceased work on the nuclear weapons.
And now they're hyping that again. I was watching CNN this morning, and they cut to some female blonde-haired comedian, I missed her name, as if it was news. They go, let's cut to see what she says about Iran. And she's like, Ahmadinejad, how dare you say you want to nuke us and blow everything up? How dare you? We see through you, little man, little devil. And then she laughs. And I'm like, this is news now? When they always distort what he says, and I'm certainly not defending him or the mullahs or any of them over there. The point is that it's all being manufactured again. They're beating the war drums. Here's the big issue. Do you think they're going to hit them, or will it be sanctions first, or will they false flag, or where is this going?
Well, it depends on how staunchly the only reputable institution in our government stands up to this. I have a lot of admiration for Admiral Mullen. I think that, he's inclined and, knee-jerk to obey orders. But he and his predecessor, Admiral Fallon, you remember Fallon quit when he was CENTCOM commander because he had said, we're not going to do Iran on my watch. And it took several months, but he was... Because
he knows what will happen. We should talk about what will happen, the three different scenarios if Iran gets hit.
That's exactly right. And one of them says, well, Iran has the capability of closing the Straits of Hormuz. Now, okay, that's where like 2/3 of the oil that comes out of the oil-rich Middle East has to come through. Okay, now what's Mullen say to that question? He says, yes, the Iranians have the capability of closing the straits, but we can reopen them. Well, yeah. How are they going to reopen them? Send a Marine division into the cliffs overlooking the Straits of Hormuz? Give me a break.
When they've got 12,000 sunburn missiles aiming down.
Yeah, and where is he going to get the Marine division? They're all already exhausted in Afghanistan, and some of them left in Iraq. So, this all has a degree of unreality. And when I see Senator Kit Bond of Missouri and John Kyle talking about we need regime change in Iran because there's such a threat to Israel, well, that just reminds me of the old saw about, when they offered to make Israel the 51st state of the United States, Israel refused. You know why, Alex?
Well, no, why?
Because then they'd only have 2 senators.
Oh, man. This is just insane. So what's the intel you're getting? Are they planning to hit Iran, or are they just going to have sanctions? Where is this going?
I think Netanyahu is chafing at the bit. And I think Obama is under great pressure from the Likud lobby and from those still in the White House who have great difficulty distinguishing between what they perceive to be the strategic interests of Israel on the one hand and those of the United States on the other. I hope, and that's what it is, a hope. It's just a little bit more than a little less than an expectation that Obama will stand up to this. This would be a ruinous war. This would be worse than what he contemplates doing in Afghanistan. This would be bedlam. And I think that as long as he listens to people like Mullen, that he'll be restrained.
Final segment with Ray McGovern straight ahead. I want to get his take on the Russia situation, where he thinks Afghanistan's going. I just wish we could stop having all these wars. I mean, our government has overthrown Iran repeatedly. They're constantly meddling inside their nation. We've really done this country wrong, folks. And now they're saying they're going to nuke us. I mean, it's just pure bull.